Before we get into this video, I want to say one thing, and that is that I am just a regular mom, just an average mom. I'd say I'm pretty good at math. I took calculus 1, 2, and 3, pretty good at English, terrible at grammar, just kind of a regular mom that has my strengths and my weaknesses. And so if you are looking for just a regular mom to give you just their honest opinions on the good and the beautiful, all about reading and logic of English, then this is the video for you. Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. I am so excited to share this video with you guys today because I feel like this could be really informative for those of you that are deciding between the good and the beautiful language arts, logic of English, or all about reading for your early elementary school kids. Hi, my name's Madison. I have 4 kids, ages 16, 8, 5, and 3. I have used the good and the beautiful, I would say the most, or I definitely would say the most, out of all of these curriculums. I've used the good and the beautiful high school levels and middle school and even their earliest elementary school levels with my 16-year-old. And then I have used their kindergarten, first grade language arts with my 8-year-old when he was at those levels. And I've used their preschool with my 8-year-old, and then my now kindergartner, I've been using preschool with them, and I'm about to start their preschool with my 3-year-old daughter. So, and I have used a lot of their curriculum and feel like I have a lot of experience with them. Now, if you saw my video I posted a while back on the good and the beautiful and why I was leaving it, then you know, you will have seen my reasons. If you haven't seen that video, I will link it down below, my reasons why I wasn't thrilled with the good and the beautiful and why I was trying something new. And then I also posted a video, I think it was my last video very recently, saying, was I wrong about the good and the beautiful? And then I'm actually trying some of their curriculum again. So I will link that video down below as well. That probably shares, like, that encompasses, those 2 videos encompass my thoughts on the good and the beautiful. In this video, I'm just gonna share some quick things in comparison, direct comparison to logic of English and all about reading. Now I haven't done full videos on logic of English and all about reading. I probably should. So maybe I'll do that in the future. So honestly, it's such a struggle right now to try to film any videos with my young kids around. So anyway, I'm just going to get right into this, and I am just going to be sharing my honest thoughts. I was using the good and the beautiful, and I felt worried that it wasn't deep enough. My son Henry, which I talk about this more in that quitting the good and the beautiful video, but my son Henry was, I think, completing the first grade level, and I felt like some of the reading he was struggling with, and I was just feeling like the emphasis on the phonograms wasn't enough and that we needed a little bit more help in that area. And so I thought, okay, I'm going to try logic of English. So I went from the good and the beautiful in preschool, kindergarten, and first grade to then switching to the logic of English. I think at the end of first grade is when we switched to it. So let's talk about that for a moment. So I have all my logic of English stuff right here. So I got 2 levels. I got, let's see, what are they called? So I got Foundations C for my end of first grade and beginning of 2nd grader. And then I also got Foundations A for my entering kindergartner. So I did not start this with him until the beginning of this year, but this one I think I did start at the end of last year with my now 2nd grader. So I'm gonna say up front, this is just my honest experiences with these curriculum. This is not like some expert coming to talk to you guys. So this is my honest experience. So we did use a decent amount of Foundations C, and it was going okay, and I did like it at first. And then I'm just gonna say right off the bat, we barely used Foundations A. Like, I do plan on selling this most likely, although I do fear that every kid is different, and so I'm kind of thinking maybe I should keep it just in case my daughter would be suited better for this. You never know, because I do really try to evaluate like what my individual child needs, because honestly, every kid is different in how they learn, and I think that's a beautiful part of homeschooling, is being able to tailor their learning to what works best for them. But also at the end of the day, me as the mom and what I can do is really, I think, the most important. And I would say the number one thing I've learned is the best curriculum is the one that you will do consistently every single day, like Monday through Friday or Monday through Thursday. If you feel like a curriculum really suits your kid, but you just feel overwhelmed by it and don't think that you can get it done each day, and it's like a struggle to get yourself to do it, then it's probably not the right curriculum for y'all, even if it would possibly work for your kid if you had the time. Maybe it's too teacher intensive and you just don't have the time because you have a bunch of other kids, or it's just not the right fit for you as a mom. Maybe it's just too overwhelming for you as a mom. Then I think that's not the right curriculum. So anyway, so basically I'm not going to get too far into why, because I think I'll make a whole video on logic of English. But we started this with my kindergartner and I was just like, what? I will say, as a comparison, so since this is a comparison video, as a comparison to The Good and the Beautiful, which I have the most experience with, I do feel like it's similar in that it's more of an all-in-one approach. Like, you have reading instruction, you have grammar instruction, and you have spelling instruction, which is similar to The Good and the Beautiful. All About Reading is mostly reading, although they do have some other stuff, but they don't have any spelling because, you know, they have their All About Spelling program. So I would say that's a similarity between The Good and the Beautiful and Logic of English. And I was liking this at first. I like the games. I think the games are really fun in this curriculum. That was something that I felt like was better than The Good and the Beautiful, was the games. One difference, so I felt like The Good and the Beautiful, at least for kindergarten and first grade, their spelling was very minimal. And I didn't like that. I wanted a little bit more from their spelling. Now, when they get to third grade, they do have like this little spelling book. So I just got this third grade course, so I can't say too much about it because we just got started with it. But I do like that they have some spelling instruction. I like that it's really simple and that it goes along with the things that the curriculum is teaching. I think you do it like every other lesson, something like that. So I do like that. I will say, between The Good and the Beautiful and Logic of English, I am thinking I actually like The Good and the Beautiful spelling more, which I think would probably come as a surprise because I didn't like their spelling in kindergarten and first grade. At least I felt like I didn't. But I think my mindset has shifted or changed. I don't think a kindergartner and a first grader really needs that much spelling instruction, honestly. I think they need a little bit, maybe a little bit more than The Good and the Beautiful does, but they don't need a ton. They just need good books read to them. They need to learn how to read, like that's their primary thing they're learning. And once you get to Foundations C, the spelling was too much, honestly. So you get this like spelling rules, quick reference thing, pamphlet. And honestly, it was just overwhelming for me. We did do the spelling and I felt like it was good. It definitely taught me ways to teach my child spelling and reminders and things for them. So it was good, but I just felt like it was a little too complicated, a little bit too much, and I wasn't loving it. I wasn't loving the spelling, so honestly, we would skip it a lot. What we did end up doing was getting Spelling UC, which is a program that I love. So if I could throw Spelling UC in here as a comparison of all of these, I would say Spelling UC is my favorite spelling curriculum. However, even with that curriculum, I feel like I need a little bit more. Like it's a lot of copy work and a lot of dictation in Spelling UC. And when they're doing their, at the end of the week, they do their dictation where they have to write the whole thing themselves and you read it aloud to them. I feel like if I have another spelling curriculum that kind of gives me ideas on instruction, like remember this phonogram or remember this spelling rule, that helps me when we're using Spelling UC. So I kind of want two different, like Spelling UC has its own approach to spelling, and I want like a more kind of typical traditional spelling curriculum as well, just to kind of combine it. So because I am using Spelling UC, I don't think I need an intense spelling curriculum to go with it, and that's why I'm thinking I will like the Good and the Beautiful spelling, because it is pretty minimal. I also think that you learn spelling through osmosis of reading, and that I don't think you necessarily need to spend a ton of time on spelling. So anyway, I did, just long and short, I didn't really like the spelling of Foundations C. So like, where's a spelling thing that we did? So like, okay, you would have it, they call it spelling analysis. And so they would give you a word, have it in a sentence. You have these like markings and these spelling hints. So I do feel like it's very in-depth and that could be helpful, but it was just a little bit too much for me, and I just found myself skipping it. And I'm like, if we're skipping this, why? Like, that's one knock to this curriculum of like, why are we using this curriculum if we're skipping this portion? You know, now other parts might be worth keeping, but I did feel like that was a knock to this curriculum. Okay, so that's spelling, which obviously I haven't talked about all about reading because it doesn't have spelling in it. Another comparison, so let's talk about all about reading for a second. Another comparison I will say, which I talked about this in my last video, I do feel the Good and the Beautiful, and I've got all my all about reading stuff over in this cube, and all about reading are pretty similar, I've actually found. So I recently switched to all about reading from Logic of English. So a big reason I switched from Logic of English to all about reading is because I wanted something simpler. I wanted to just like focus on reading with my kids. For the most part, I felt like this was just a little bit too much with the amount of kids that I have. I have 3 little ones and a teenager. It just felt like it was a little teacher intensive, a little bit much. And I really think that in these younger years, kindergarten, 1st, 2nd grade, you really need to just get the reading down. That's the most important step. I decided to switch to all about reading. And when I did, this was my first time using it. I got level 1 and level 3. When I was using level 3 with my 2nd grader, I noticed how similar it is to the Good and the Beautiful. And I actually remembered, so with all about reading, you get all these, you can buy this bin, and then you get all these flashcards. And that brought me back, the Good and the Beautiful actually used to have a ton of flashcards. So I'll compare the flashcards of all 3 curriculum. That's what I'll do here. So when I used the Good and the Beautiful with my now 16-year-old, I think we used it in 4th grade, 3rd or 4th grade. They had a ton of flashcards. And it honestly felt like too much and kind of a waste of time because my son like knew the flashcards, and it just felt like overkill and a little bit too much. And honestly, that's kind of how I'm feeling about all about reading's flashcards. Like, it's a little bit overkill. Now, the flashcards for Logic of English, I do like a lot, and I think I will actually continue to use these. I should have just bought these instead of the whole program, because this is honestly, if you would say, what's your favorite part of Logic of English? I would say these flashcards. I don't know, they're just such good quality. I love how like big and clear they are, and they give you, you know, the explanation on the back, and there's lots of different games and things that you can use with these flashcards. Logic of English gives you ideas for those, but you could learn that from The Good and the Beautiful, or you could learn that just by looking up like games to use with flashcards. You know, they're simple things that Logic of English has you do. It's not like rocket science. So anyway, I do love their flashcards for the phonograms. And that was something that I felt was a little bit lacking with The Good and the Beautiful. So they had the flashcards back in the day, but something I like about The Good and the Beautiful is they continue to update their stuff, and they have like test families, and they listen to their test families, and they listen to what people say, and they change things. So instead of the flashcards, they went to these booster cards. I do love these. We use these, like I said, for my kindergartner and my 1st grader. And I feel like they're fantastic. I feel like they are taking the stuff that you would be using the flashcards for and just kind of simplifying it and putting it on a, just a page, a booster card. And so instead of all these flashcards that you have to keep track of, you just have all of them here on the page. And I really like that better, I think. I would say that I like these flashcards by Logic of English, more than I like All About Reading's flashcards. But I would say I like the booster cards probably more than Logic of English flashcards because they're just a little bit more in depth. And I much prefer this simplicity of this, especially with the amount of kids I have, over all these flashcards. Now, I will say, the reason we switched is I felt like, from the Good and the Beautiful, is I felt like things weren't in depth enough. Like these booster cards maybe weren't quite enough. That's where I think we could have just taken out these flashcards, like just stopped the Good and the Beautiful for a little bit, taken out these phonogram flashcards and just practiced them. Like, sorry if you hear my kids screaming in the background. Just practice the flashcards and played games with them and just focused on that a little bit. And I think that his reading then would have picked up. So that's one thing I will say about Logic of English versus the Good and the Beautiful. I wish maybe they just had offered some flashcards as like an idea, you know, or a way of doing things. But anyway, so I love how simplified these are. I think I just got discouraged. I love how simple and just, I'm a normal mom. Like I'm not like this super high IQ mom or something like that. So when and I'm not very organized. So when they can organize something and make it simple, especially when I have a bunch of other kids to teach, I feel like that's a huge plus. Even if maybe all of these flashcards would be a little bit more in depth. So I will say I like these more. But I think there is a time when you need to slow down and stop. And so I still like All About Reading. I feel like I won't sell my level 1 and level 3, even though I'm kind of going back to the Good and the Beautiful, because I think there are times when your kid, if you're noticing your kid struggling, the Good and the Beautiful just doesn't have enough depth to support you in that. And so stopping and using All About Reading for a little bit or using it together, I think could help. Or even just stopping and doing the Logic of English flashcards can help. And that's where I like combining curriculum. So I will say that maybe your kid, even though it's like more simple and just nice to just have these booster cards, your kid may need the flashcards. They may need that like in-depth instruction for a little bit, a period of time. It may not even be forever though. So you may be like, my kid needs this and now I have to do All About Reading, even though I really like the simplicity of the Good and the Beautiful. I would say maybe just do All About Reading for a little bit, or, you know, add it on with the Good and the Beautiful if that's something you still want to stick with. So that's my comparison of their flashcards or booster cards, the pros and cons of them. You may notice that I do like certain parts of all of this curriculum. I would say I would not, if I were to go back in time, I wouldn't buy the Logic of English. I would just buy their flashcards. Like they also have this book. This is for the Foundation C. I feel like this is kind of like a waste of money. Like it's just, it talks about like the IR phonogram and it gives it in like, you know, multiple words. It shows what it's in. And this is kind of like babyish to my son and not really that helpful. So kind of a waste of money and time, I feel like. The flashcards are really good. So, okay, that's enough about that. Now let's compare the readers. So I really like All About Reading's readers. We have been using, is this the one? Yeah. So we've been using, we're still on volume 1 with my son. He's been flying through All About Reading, honestly. And that was why I decided to pick up the Good and Beautiful Language Arts 3, because I was like, I think he's ready to just get back to like a regular curriculum. Like I think his reading has really improved. Like he still needs practice, but I think it's really improved. So anyway, I think that All About Reading helped with that. Because we just focused, like we left Logic of English and like, let's just focus on reading. No grammar, you know, no spelling, just reading. And I really do like the stories that they have in here. Something I like is they will, before you do the reading, it's much more in depth. Like the Good and the Beautiful, this is their 3rd grade reader. it's not quite as in-depth talking about the story or asking questions about the story. Like some of these things, like they would talk about before you read one of the stories about alliteration. And so they would point out alliteration, and then as you went through the story, it would give you specific pages that there's an example of alliteration or onomatopoeia, or what's another one? There's another one, I can't remember it right now, that my son and I have been working on. And I really like that they do that because it's so simple and it's a really good way. Oh, simile. And it's a really good way of teaching that, because as we're reading his readers, it kind of taught me how to do that. Because now when we read like our Sunlight books or just any book, I'll be like, oh, Henry. So now like when we're doing our Sunlight readers, I'll be like, oh, Henry, what is that? An onomatopoeia, alliteration, simile. I really like that All About Reading points that out. And that they helped me like teach me how to talk about that in the books. And so I feel like too, I may not always have to use All About Reading, but just like some of their concepts and things have taught me as a teacher how to use that without even needing the curriculum necessarily in the future. So we are still continuing with this. We're just kind of slowing it down. Like it got to a point where it's pretty easy for him and he's doing like 2 lessons a day and we're gonna get through it quick. So I'm just slowing it down and using it as like extra reading practice and ways to teach me about those different, I think you call them literary devices maybe. But anyway, so I do like the readers. I think the stories are engaging and I like that the support they give to the parent of, you know, teaching things that you can do. I would say Logic of English is similar in that you have they give you these smaller books, smaller readers, and you, theirs are kind of like nonfiction, which I thought my son would like this is about a firefly, but I don't know, I honestly think their stories are a little bit boring. I think that All About Reading's readers are a little bit more engaging than Logic of English. But Logic of English does similarly to All About Reading kind of give you some ideas of pre-reading things to do and before they read the book and questions to ask them and things like that. But I would say just personal preference between the two. I've enjoyed All About Reading's style of how they do things, like really focusing on those literary devices. Hopefully that's what that's called, like onomatopoeia, simile, stuff like that. And it's just more simple, I think, but effective than Logic of English. Now with The Good and the Beautiful, I think they somewhat do that with their readers, but I don't think it's quite the same. But we've gotten back to using some of their readers. I've kind of talked bad about their readers because I feel like they kind of water them down, make them all goody two-shoes, which is not something that I love about The Good and the Beautiful, but I do like, they have so they have this practice page. They talk about different decoding skills, and then you get into the reading, and I do like how it has the student portion and then the parent portion, because I think it is good for them to hear how it's supposed to sound when you read and go back and forth. And I think it also makes it a little bit less intimidating when the child is reading. It gives them a little bit of a break. So that is something I do like, and it is sweet. Like this first story, they're talking about this boy who is having a cousin come live with him because her parents died, and he's having to lose his room and he's a little bit upset. And then the girl, the cousin, is actually like, look, I'm not going to take your room. I can stay in the living room. It's fine. And she goes in the living room and it really surprises him. And I felt like that was a good example of having compassion and kindness towards others that kids don't always think of. Think about someone else, not yourself, for a minute. And so I thought that was a good little lesson to teach and was sweet. So I was okay with that. I am not the readers for their high school. I'll never get behind that, but that was cute. So that's the difference in their readers, I would say. Okay, what was the other difference? Oh, okay, so All About Reading and The Good and the Beautiful, something I've noticed is they are very similar, but I feel like The Good and the Beautiful kind of makes it more simple. I have found, so I do like their reader and how they explain to do their reading, but I have not always enjoyed the lesson before the book. So I do feel like that the lesson is a little bit repetitive and would a little bit get in the weeds. So not when it's talking about the reader, I really like that part of All About Reading, but when it's talking about syllables, open syllable, closed syllable, things like that, I feel like Certain moms probably love that and love how in-depth they're going with that. I feel like it's a little bit in the weeds, which is another, so that brings me to why I didn't really like Foundations A. They were like talking about how you should use your mouth or something when you're like saying certain letters, and like notice how you do this with your mouth and stuff. And I was just like, this is too much. Like my kids don't care. Like I just thought it was a little unnecessary. And that is how I feel with some of these syllable instructions. Like it's a little unnecessary. And something I noticed about The Good and the Beautiful when they're giving instruction on reading is instead of just doing those like syllable chunks for reading, they said just doing, I think they call it chunking or something, just like natural chunks. Instead of like a syllable, sometimes with syllables, it's not necessarily how you would naturally split it up. And so they say something about like, I'm still getting into that because I'm just getting back into The Good and the Beautiful, but something about just the natural chunks when you're trying to read a bigger word and stuff. And I like that more. I like how simple The Good and the Beautiful is. I feel like sometimes simple is okay. It's okay to not go quite as deep. And so what I am preferring is having the simplicity of The Good and the Beautiful and then using extra things like spelling you see to go a little bit deeper in that area of spelling and learn in a little bit different of a way. I also like how the lesson, they have videos. My son did say he missed The Good and the Beautiful videos. That was one thing we really liked about it. I do like their videos. They are, I know there are other curriculum like BJU Press and probably a Becca that has videos, but those curriculums feel like regular school to me and they're just a little bit too much. The Good and the Beautiful has videos, but it's short, quick videos on the topic and then you move on. So Logic of English might have, I think it does have some kind of videos or online component. I didn't try it, but I just really like how simple The Good and the Beautiful videos are. I don't think All About Reading has any video components that I know of. But maybe look into Logic of English video components if that's something you would like, because I think they do have something like that. So anyway, I do think I like The Good and the Beautiful's videos. I think that's something that I really missed. And that, oh, another thing is independence. When we're doing All About Reading or Logic of English, there's very little independence for my son. Whereas The Good and the Beautiful is slowly bringing your kid up to independence. I think in 4th grade, they can basically do it fully independent. You just have to check their work and everything because they have the videos and all that they can do. 3rd grade, they're like preparing them for that independence. Even in kindergarten, they have their independent work, which I really like because I don't feel like Logic of English or All About Reading do that. One other thing I will say about independent work, instead of independent work, like All About Reading also has these, where are they? Oh, these activity sheets. Super babyish, and we just stopped doing them, me and my son. He just didn't need them. He needed a little bit more in-depth reading instruction for a minute. And so I really like honestly, I wish you, for All About Reading, you could just get like the readers and the reading instruction and like that's it, because that's really all he needed. He didn't need these extra activity sheets. He didn't need the practice fluency sheets where you're just reading a bunch of words and practicing them. I noticed though, that's very similar to the booster cards where they have you practice words and they practice sentences, reading sentences and stuff. But I like The Good and the Beautiful's way. It's a little bit more simple than the fluency sheets from All About Reading. So I would really say, in comparison to All About Reading and The Good and the Beautiful, The Good and the Beautiful is just a more simplified version. And I think it just jives with my style of teaching more. But I do like having The Good and the All About Reading for some more in-depth teaching that I think sometimes my kids need. So, okay, I'm going to have to end this video. I hope that gave you guys some ideas on the differences and the pros and cons of the 3 curriculum. Definitely let me know down below if you use any of this curriculum, which one's your favorite. And if you have any questions, definitely leave them down below. I would love to do a Q&A one of these days, but nobody gives me any questions. So if you want to give me some questions down below, I could possibly film like a whole Q&A video here on my channel, just any homeschooling questions or whatever. So anyway, thanks so much for watching. Please give this video a thumbs up. That shows YouTube that it was a good video. They might push it out to others. Definitely subscribe and click the bell to be notified when I post videos, because sometimes the YouTube algorithm can bury your videos, so that will allow you to see when I post, and I kind of post randomly. So anyway, thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye. But I just really wanted to get my thoughts out. I'm listening to my kids scream, call each other poo-poo. They're playing on the patio right now. It was raining really hard earlier today, so instead of going outside, they're like on the patio. And yeah, they're very loud, my 3 little ones.